All right. Just finished it. What did you guys think? Thanks, Horky, Leonard, Prince Felix, for watching it with me. I'm very excited to play the next one. I really want to see what they do with Venom. I think that their story writing, they're so good at handling conflicted characters. I thought Finn was a fantastic character. She had great motivations for what she wanted to do. It all felt believable. She had a really nice arc, a nice give and take with Miles. I think they did feel like sciencey nerds. Obviously, he's like pretty buff for a sciencey nerd, but I guess there are some buff sciencey nerds. And yeah, I mean, I think the game just does a great job of focusing on the combat, the web traversal, and the story, and then I guess like the open world aspect. And with the combat, it walks a line of it could feel a little bit tedious, but and maybe near the end of it did, but there's so many other options where it's kind of as tedious as you want to make it. So you could just kind of very simply go through and press square a lot to pound people and then dodge. Use the venom strikes when you need them. They kind of, you're like always sort of managing these different bars that are coming up and filling up and finishers and choosing some difference in the ability tree. It seemed like of the abilities you could actually do, I grabbed most of those, and then it was more of like things you could upgrade. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed the combat. It's just so intuitive, the same way that the Arkham series combat was, where you're able to just sort of, from wherever you are, you don't really have to think about it too much. It's either like square to keep attacking, triangle to web people, either you go towards them or that brings them towards you. So triangle closes the gap. You can jump, you can dodge, tells you when to dodge. You rarely need to operate the camera. You've got your web shooting, you got a few other devices you can use, and you're managing the venom power of either using that to heal or using that for other attacks. And there were a lot of these modern AAA games that were open world and very cinematic that I just had no interest, with like God of War, I couldn't stick with. I know that Felix, you really like that game, but it made me not want to play the original Spider-Man on PS4 because I thought, it's going to have that padding. And this game did have that, where there was the part in the middle. There were a few missions that were just like power generator. Way too many of those. And especially for a short game, I think they could have been slightly more creative with the puzzles, but that just keeps it from being, say, like a perfect game, where there's a bit of a sag there. But I did actually enjoy the openness, because there were times that before I went to bed, I would fire up this game and just run around, do some sort of combat missions. They have a nice variety, and they let you choose that variety pretty well, depending on what you want to do. Whether you just want to get into combat, whether you want to do a bit of story, whether you want to explore stuff. And then you're either unlocking those tokens and then the tech parts to unlock the different suits and get more skills. And I was able to find this suit that seemed to work well with the camouflage. And the camouflage as well made it slightly, maybe a bit too easy with the combat. But there were certainly situations in the combat where it felt like a really great challenge. And I would be interested in playing this game on a harder difficulty and really testing out those mechanics. But in terms of them really having well thought out, well balanced mechanics that straddle the line of challenging but still feeling like a sort of a power fantasy, I think that it's such a great job. Going around the city with the web swinging, they have just enough mechanics there to make that really satisfying. You could just simply hold R2 and swing. You can jump. You could just hold R2 and he'll automatically leave. You can press jump at the apex and get that height. You can dive down to get more speed. You can do tricks when you've got a bit of airtime. You've got that X button that lets you sort of grab onto something else and maintain altitude. You can upgrade this. You can do that twice. You can do that point, whatever it was, L2 and R2, where it yanks you towards it, and then you can jump. You can press X before so you automatically jump, or you can time it and get that extra boost. So it's similar to something you'd see in Nintendo, where they have well thought out mechanics where here's a way you can do it a little bit easier, and here's a way that you can do it if you do the timing just perfectly. It's like that thing they did in Gears of War where you can reload, but if you time the reload perfectly, you do it faster, right? Or you get an extra bullet or something. Probably just faster. And if you do that too slow, then you end up having it be it ends up like jamming your gun or whatever. So stuff like that I really appreciate. Horky, you think it has a bit of a trying to be GTA vibe? Yeah, I think so. I think any kind of big open world city where you're trying to do open world missions and deal with pedestrians is going to have a bit of a GTA comparison. I think what this game is good at is staying in its lane and realizing what it's good at and what it needs to be, and not trying to do too much like Cyberpunk did and suffered for, or like Outriders being incredibly generic and bland because they didn't bother to develop the things that it does well and just trying to be everything. Oh, the little radio things? Yeah. And that's a good example where GTA is going to have a whole bunch of different radio stations and a couple talk radio stations. This one has just 2 podcasts that they can control the quality of, one representing one side and opinion, one representing the other. I did find the JJ one I liked. I found the Danica cast pretty annoying, but maybe some people really like the Danica cast and they hate the JJ one. The story I thought was just done so well, where it was a superhero story and Miles had enough depth. I thought Finn was just written great. Horky, you said you didn't like her near the end, but you kind of expect that from this. But I really liked her arc. It is a little bit silly, like you mentioned, where she's trying to save the city, but she's obviously doing so much damage to it. But I was with it. I bought into the charm. I was totally with the characters and what they were trying to do, with the humor. I was really blown away by the writing, the acting, face scanning, cinematography. They didn't overdo it. They only had a few NPCs that looked fantastic. It's his uncle, I thought, was a great character, and also really works with Spider-Man's. The whole idea of Spider-Man is that it's tough being a superhero. You have to have this double life, and kind of like when it being difficult to sort of pick and choose when you have to be responsible and that kind of thing. And I think that both of those characters really explored that really well, and then Miles being sort of the opposite of what they were doing. So I was totally in on this game. It really makes me want to play Spider-Man Remastered at some point later on down the road, and I'm really excited for Spider-Man 3 and to see what they can do with it just being on the PS5 and take total advantage of it. Prince, you really liked Finn's weapons. The fight with her felt super cinematic. Yeah, I thought they did such a great job of combining that cinematic Uncharted feel. It felt like a fantastic Naughty Dog game. I haven't played many of the other games that this company makes. I believe this is Insomniac, and they do Ratchet and Clank. Ratchet and Clank always feels kind of slow to me, and I have no nostalgic connection to it. So, but this felt like, wow, if you were a big fan of Uncharted and just weren't a fan of Last of Us Part 2 being really dark and gritty, you've got this, and this is a big thing for Sony to have. So as somebody who just spent a whole bunch of money in PS5, I'm selfishly happy that I had something like this, and it actually kind of boosted my spirits on it, because at first, not being a huge Demon Souls fan, even though the remake is beautiful to look at, but not really having that much fun to play it, I thought, well, I got this thing. Yeah, I can do 4K of old games and run them at 60, and I can play Rocket League and load it up fast. But having this game and thinking, this is great. I wish it was not just an exclusive. I wonder if they'll put it on PC. I doubt they will, because I believe that they own this studio. So I think they'll keep this one close to the vest, which kind of sucks, because I wish more people could play it. It really invigorated me the same way it invigorated me for games of this type. Because like Breath of the Wild, before I played Breath of the Wild, I was starting to feel like, man, maybe I just don't like Zelda games. Maybe it's either that I just don't like Zelda games anymore. Ever since Ocarina of Time and Majora's, I've kind of played them and thought, all right, I see the system, I see what it's doing. I was looking for something more. Or sometimes you just think, maybe I'm just too old for this shit. you know? If I'm going to play a game and think, that's a bit too childish, that's a bit too easy, well, maybe they're just made for kids. But this felt really good, the way Breath of the Wild did, where I was just totally in. I felt emotion during the story. I really enjoyed the ending, the arcs. The beginning of this game was like 10 out of 10. The end of it, 9.5 out of 10. The middle, the creamy middle was a bit flabby and gooey and slightly disappointing for a game that is shorter, but I get it. They're going to be trying to build off of the last game, so there's only so much they can do. It's the same thing with like Uncharted Lost Legacy, where it was similar to this. Going to be that feel of could have been a DLC, but expanded into kind of a mid-range, mid-length game. Pretty expensive for a game of this length, I'd say. So I get it. They got to bring forward the systems that they had. But now I'm super excited for Spider-Man 3. I mean, I'd highly recommend this to anybody who likes action and people who think that maybe these open world cinematic third-person tentpole PlayStation exclusive ones are just not for them. So I really loved it. Pretty impressed. Happy I played it. Looking forward to the next.